let's go ahead and kick things off. I know a lot of people are coming in this morning, but as we get started, I just want to welcome everyone to the 2026 Economic Outlook Annual Membership Meeting. I'm Stephen Bader, the Executive Director of the East Bay Economic Development Alliance, East Bay EDA. I want to thank, we have some great sponsors here for today's event. We're being hosted by the team here at Bishop Ranch here in the Roundhouse Auditorium. A shout out to Alex Marin Jr. and his team here for having us on the premises today. We're going to hear a bit from him shortly. We also have our event sponsors for today, including John Muir Health, the Oakland Roots and Soul, and Southwest. So yeah, let's give it up for all of them. We definitely want to recognize them for their great support. And with that, actually, you're able to enjoy a fantastic breakfast today thanks to the support of John Muir Health. So I want to go ahead and call up Sharon Quesada Jenkins from John Muir Health, who's the Director of Government Affairs and External Relations, to welcome us.
Look at that. Okay. Well, when he asked me to do this, I didn't know he was going to put a picture up there, so... Good morning, everyone, and thanks everybody for coming inside. Apologies about the breakfast, and I hope you enjoy it. So even on your way out, maybe grab something to eat. So as Stephen mentioned, good morning. My name is Sharon Quesada Jenkins. I'm the Director of Government Affairs and External Relations at John Muir Health. So John Muir Health has been a proud member of East Bay EDA. We've been a member for probably over 10 plus years, and events like today are a strong reminder of why that partnership matters. As one of the largest employers in Contra Costa County, John Muir Health leadership relies on organizations like East Bay EDA to help us understand the economic conditions shaping our region. And those conditions influence how large employers, all size employers, make decisions as far as where people receive their health insurance, right? Because you get your health insurance through your employer, which means that those decisions are ultimately impacting our patients. So we need to know what is going on. Last month, John Muir Health was proud to host the East Bay EDA Board of Directors. We all met at our Concord Medical Center. And we were joined by Kaiser, Sutter, and Stanford Valley Care. All of us were there. And we were all there to discuss the impacts of HR 1 and the One Big Beautiful Bill. So all of these healthcare systems, we're all members of East Bay EDA. We're all some of the largest employers in the East Bay. And so what is going to be happening to all of us in the next couple of years, if it goes into place the way that it is, it's going to have significant impact on all of us. And it is going to affect the East Bay economy. So thank you all for being here. Thank you for engaging. Thank you for listening, becoming educated, all of these things. And I hope you all enjoyed your breakfast. Please take something on the way out. So at this time, I would like to go ahead and call up Laura Potter, Chief Revenue Officer for the Oakland Roots and Soul. She's also, right, you're a co-sponsor, yes? And to talk about the team's efforts to prepare for the 2026 World Cup. So come on up.
These are your names, by the way. These are your names. And if the first person's on here, you can go.
Great, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Nice to meet you. I'm Laura Potter. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer for the Oakland Roots and Soul. For some of you who may not know who we are a professional soccer team that plays at the Oakland Coliseum. This past year, we hosted over 130,000 people at the Coliseum to watch the beautiful sport of soccer. Our team is the first ever purpose-driven, community-owned team in the United States. And thank you. And we say that with tons of heart and everything that we have to give to this community. We absolutely believe that from the bottoms of our heart, that truly businesses that are founded on supporting and uplifting their communities can strive to be great, giving back to the community as well as being solvent and being able to succeed in the business world. So, one of the things that we have this around World Cup is we are going to be the home base for Team Australia as they make their run at World Cup. We have taken over and purchased the training facility of the former Oakland Raiders, and that is now our beautiful home to share with Team Australia throughout their run. They will be in the East Bay for that entire time, and we hear that there will be over 100,000 visitors also coming to see their team and just be close to their team, which is great for all of us and all of you. We truly believe that all businesses should be able to take part in the excitement and beauty of the sport. And as the excitement builds for World Cup, we want businesses in the East Bay to also be able to uplift themselves as part of that. We want to harness the power of sport as a force for social good, and we believe that businesses can do that as well. We have something called the East Bay Soccer Trail that we have started. It lives on our website, and anyone, any business doing anything around World Cup, whether that is a local restaurant with a specialized menu, or it's your local nail salon who is doing colors of the favorite teams, whatever that looks like to you, if you're doing watch parties with your businesses, you can put that on our East Bay Soccer Trail, and we are promoting that out to everyone. Anyone that wants to take part in what we're doing, they'll go to the East Bay Soccer Trail, find your business, and be able to participate. They can sort by where you are, where they live, as well as their favorite team and that type of thing. We're also doing watch parties, so be on the lookout there, but please come visit the East Bay Soccer Trail. How you can support, please show up, be there, be a fan of doing what's right in our community. Be a fan, help us uplift the rest of the community around us by coming to the games, becoming a season ticket member, providing a warm handoff to our next sponsor. Whatever that looks like to you, we would love for you to help us help uplift our community. With that said, I have 2 raffle items, 2 jerseys. Last year, our third kit jersey was named #1 in the world across all FIFA teams, across all teams around the world. This design of this jersey was named #1 in the world. All right. Thank you. I have 2 of these jerseys, so let's see. Alan Edlerski. Is Alan here? Okay, Jennifer Fothergill. Jennifer, woo! Okay, and I'm gonna read the next one down. Benito Delgado Olson. Come on down. And Arashi Murata. Okay. Lenore Mares. Is Lenore here? Yay! Thank you. Thank you.
All right, one more time. Let's give it up to Laura and the Oakland Roots and Soul for their great work. Definitely very appreciative of their support and sponsorship, and really of also very exciting to see what's happening with their World Cup prep. I was actually at their headquarters last week, and they're doing a lot to get things ready. So with that, I want to go ahead now and move into our program and call up our esteemed chair and one of the members of the Contra Costa County Board of Supervisors, the Honorable Candace Anderson. All right.
Good morning, everybody. As Stephen just mentioned, I'm Candace Anderson, and as you can see, I'm Candace Anderson, chair of East Bay EDA, and I also serve on the Contra Costa County Board of Supervisors. It is wonderful to see so many of you here today for our East Bay EDA's 2026 Economic Outlook and Annual Membership Meeting. We are so glad that you are joining us this morning to learn about economic trends happening across our region and beyond during these very uncertain times. For those of you who are curious, the May revise from the governor is supposed to be out this morning at 10:30, so stay tuned for that as well. But it is exciting to be here at Bishop Ranch. This is the first time we are holding the event here, and we'll hear from him soon, but we want to thank Alex Marin Jr. for hosting us. And as I joked with Alan, we didn't invite him to join East Bay EDA just so we could meet here, although it is a very cool space to meet. So thank you very much, Alex, for hosting us today. And I've called out one person in the audience. Could I have any elected officials or former elected officials just stand up so we can give you a hand? Thank you so much. So, most of you know that East Bay EDA was founded more than 35 years ago when a diverse network of regional business and elected leaders came together collaboratively to address economic development concerns that impact exclusively the East Bay region. And since that time, East Bay EDA has evolved into a cross-sector regional economic development organization that includes many different stakeholder groups across both Alameda and Contra Costa County: business, education, government, labor, local government agencies, philanthropy, research, and others. And as today is East Bay EDA's annual membership meeting, I want to underscore that East Bay EDA is only as effective and successful as a network of members, partners, and other stakeholders who stand with us to tackle strategic regional economic development issues. So can those of you in our audience who either serve on East Bay EDA's board of directors or any of our committees, please stand up so we can recognize you. And we hope that those of you who did not stand up will go talk to some of these individuals and consider joining East Bay EDA, or if you're already a member, consider joining one of these committees, which is where we really do the deep dive and get a lot of the very, very important work done. So speaking of our work, East Bay EDA does bring together key stakeholders at events such as today's Economic Outlook event, really to help regional leaders learn, share ideas, and tackle shared principles. We have a legislative platform that guides our legislative and policy work and have really increased our engagement around key regional and state issues that are in play this year. We research these issues and trends impacting the East Bay economy, as well as provide a range of informational resources through our multiple communication channels and platforms that we hope you are all taking advantage of. Many of you may know that May is Small Business Month, and for this reason, and because we have many community partners here today, we want to highlight and remind you about East Bay EDA's Great Regional Business Resource Map. This is a tool that includes information about more than 400 listings from organizations providing low and no-cost services for small businesses. If you are connected to one of the service categories listed on the slide, we encourage you to visit your website, submit an update about your existing listing so that it remains current and so that our small businesses will know how to reach out to you and engage your services. Now, none of East Bay EDA's work can be done without our major investors, our sponsors, and special thanks to the companies and organizations whose logos appear on the slide that are investing in sponsoring our East Bay EDA above and beyond their basic membership level. Let's give them a round of applause as well. And if you have a business or organization and your logo is not featured there, we'd encourage you to reach out to our East Bay EDA staff, board of directors, to learn more about how you too can find your name on this board. Okay, now something that not everyone may know about East Bay EDA is that we actually have two websites. East Bay EDA's main website is eastbayeda.org, and this is where we house information, research, special projects, current activities, but we also have our Resilient East Bay website, and this holds a different level of information about the East Bay's manufacturing sector, including an interactive map of East Bay business profiles of priority industry sectors, toolkits for local planning and zoning, and a resource directory and a regional events calendar as well. And speaking of events, many of you know that East Bay EDA has had a history of doing work around international trade and investment, going back to our roots with the Port of Oakland. GORMEX East Bay is East Bay EDA's next event, and one that is being done in partnership with the Mexican Consulate in San Francisco. Focused on cross-cultural and international connections, GORMEX East Bay is designed to celebrate and promote the talent of chefs and culinary stars of Mexican heritage who elevate the culture, richness, and tradition through their craft. And we have even more. That's not enough. The great events are coming forward, including what we are doing with the San Francisco Business Times for their upcoming Corridors of Opportunity series, which was actually launched last month, and their next event in the series will take place on July 16th, focused on the Interstate 80 corridor cities, and then with two other events coming forward later in the year focused on the 680 and Highway 4 corridors, respectively. So subscribe to our newsletter, check out the events page on our website so you can have the latest information about all of our events and activities. And now I'm going to bring up the highlight of the day, the reason you all came. I'm going to bring up our moderator and the panelists in the next section of today's program. And so Ed Del Beccaro, who is the Executive Vice President of TRI Commercial and is also our East Bay EDA Vice Chair, is going to be moderating a conversation about adaptive reuse development and placemaking with Alex Marin Jr., CEO of Sunset Development, and Riaz Toplin, the CEO of Art House Partners. As they each make their way up to the stage, I want to again thank each of you for being here this morning and for coming. Thank you so much.
That'd be nice to yourself.
30 years ago.
30 years ago. So, I'm going to be the moderator. I'm going to have each of the panelists introduce themselves briefly, but one introduction I want to give, a little known fact I found out at the pre-meetings, these were childhood friends who grew up with each other. Riyadh?
His dad called us the Sandbox Friends on Friday night, so we go back.
We've known each other 40 years, which is kind of crazy.
They're only 42, by the way.
We were best buddies in kindergarten.
Okay, so Alex, as you know, runs Bishop Ranch, several million feet, 585 acres. It's going to be 50 years in 2 years for the celebration, so congratulations. Riaz is a major home builder, but I'll have them introduce themselves briefly, 2 or 3 sentences about what you do. Riaz.
You want to go? Oh, I go first?
Yes.
Oh, I'm not used to that. In the Sandbox, he always went first. I'm the founder and CEO of Art House Partners. We are what I call an entry-level housing company. So we do a combination of your student housing, affordable housing, workforce housing. We're an Oakland-based platform, and we operate as far south as San Diego to as far north as Sacramento. And we have about 70 buildings across the state.
Great, I'm Alex Marin Jr. I'm the third generation of our family to be operating the company. Our company is 75 years old this year, and yet we've been working on Bishop Ranch for almost 50 years. We're kind of in between. On Candace's slide, she had Oakland and Brentwood. We're kind of somewhere in between. And the market, because of that, the market changes extremely fast here, and luckily our family's committed to hard work, and the team here is committed to making Bishop Ranch relevant to the customers of today. So we're changing things very quickly and excited by everything that's going on here. So thanks for being here today, and thanks to East Bay EDA for hosting it here at Bishop Branch.
Well, Alex, I'm going to give you the first question. That's a perfect segue. We're in an unusual office market right now as opposed to San Francisco, and Mr. Quinn will talk about that later. But we're still experiencing high office vacancies. Housing is still relatively unaffordable, but hopefully we can get more because of RIAS. So my first question, Alex, is Bishop Branch, as I said, is almost 50 years old and a mixed master plan community of housing, office buildings, retail. What do you see as the strongest market opportunities over the next 5 years, and how can our cities and region capture the sectors that are growing in East Bay, since you're actually moving in that sector already?
Yeah, well, so the office market is difficult. We have been planning residential and retail for a very long time. So we planned city centers. The idea started in the 90s, and we finally got around to opening it in 2018. It also had 550 units attached to it. Before COVID, we got another 4,500 units entitled in apartments. And basically our approach on office is that we're catching a falling knife. So we're improving the buildings we know are going to be great, like this building, and getting rid of buildings that we see that aren't going to work. So we've gone from 8 million feet of office down to 4, and we feel like that's going to work. It recently dropped by another 600,000 feet a couple months ago. So as we see the market not coming back, we're coming back with housing, trying to round out the place. And the retail is thriving and doing well, in part because of that. So we have 200 homeowners on site today because of a quick change with the BR6 project that Summerhill redeveloped starting in 2020. And the place is sort of coming alive with a mix of residences, retail, and office. We see a great market for higher end office, smaller units. So all of our big customers, Bank of the West was in 450,000 feet, got bought by Bank of Montreal, now they're in 30. I could rattle off 20 more names that have done similar things. But we have great new companies that are taking 10,000 feet, 20,000 feet, 30,000 feet. It just takes a bit to fill it up. But those companies bring a lot of vibrant workers here who are making the place stay alive and stay vibrant, which I think is the key today. If you tour an office building that has nobody in it, it's pretty hard to secure a lease. So that's great. And I think, obviously my bias is that these types of places where you create an environment where people don't have to commute is the opportunity. I try and stay away from things like data centers because while they're economically might be great, we just don't view them as a way to build our community here. And so I think that reducing the burden of traffic and commuting is number one. I'm sure there's a number of great things East Bay EDA is working on to alleviate traffic, which is great. But I think most people that can afford to live in California or have decided to continue to live in California, particularly if they're in San Ramon, they probably have children, probably both heads of household are working, and we want to create a place where they can do everything from getting their teeth cleaned to going to urgent care, doing their nails, getting their hair done, going to work out, going to the office. We want to keep all that in one walkable area to increase the payoff of living in California because that's what's made us a viable entity for 75 years, and we want to continue to make life in California better and do our part for that. At the same time, we have 3 affordable housing projects being built by Eden, so we want to make sure that this place is attainable to all members of our community, and we're excited about those aspects as well.
Very good. So hear that, 4 million feet of obsolescent older buildings taken down. We're predicting TRI several other million feet elsewhere in the greater East Bay will be torn down. Riaz, your firm, as you described, entry level, you've built or plan to build almost 4,000 total units. Why don't you describe where you see the market going and the future opportunity?
Cool. Well, first, I just want to give a big shout out to my buddy Alex here. I think, Bishop Branch, has been this place I've been coming to since a kid, and the way that the Marins and now Alex has had this long-term thinking, and I think that's one of the big problems that we have in this country, in this state, is a lack of long-term thinking, and the ability for someone to think not in quarters or years, but in decades is very commendable. So big shout out to you, buddy. So we have a business, and one of the things that the last 7 years has taught me is that cycles matter. right? And we all want to pretend that you can grow your business at some steady, smooth, gradual, consistent, all these nice calm words. And it just turns out not how markets work, right? And so, the inner Bay Area, San Francisco, Oakland, residential rents fell by 40% in the aftermath of COVID. In a city like San Francisco, one-bedroom rents in Q1 2026 have now returned to nominal levels Q1 2019. So 7 years later, we now have rents that are equal to what they were in 2019. That is insane, right? And so for those people that are economist folks, right? Those nominal rents are worth about 25 cents less. So in real terms, rents are probably about 25% below their 2019 levels. In Oakland, basically, we are sitting today with rents that are 40% below their 2019 levels in real terms, right? So in other words, the value of the dollar I'm collecting on my average unit is 60 cents for what I was collecting back in 2019. For those of you that are business owners, can you imagine your revenues falling by 40% and then everybody comes to you at the end of the year and wants a raise? You're like, but my revenues are down 40%. How am I supposed to do that? Anyway, somehow we made it work. But moving forward, what's exciting is the fact that we're now at the part where the market starts to bounce back. And the same way where markets, when they fall, just collapse, when they start to spike, move very quickly. So in San Francisco, the market has moved 30%, give or take, from a rental point of view in a 24-month period on a median basis. So if you take a neighborhood like Pacific Heights, rents are up probably 50% over a 24-month period. If you take an area like Soma or the Tenderloin, you're going to get a smaller number. For those of us in the East Bay, I always call the East Bay the last domino, right? So, and what's nice about the last domino is you always know when it's going to fall because the one before you is now falling. So what I see happening in the next 12 to 18 months is Oakland and, inner East Bay, right, is going to see a phenomenal rent increase despite itself, right? So unlike, Bishop Ranch, which has great leadership under Alex, Oakland, we don't have the best leadership, right? And so despite itself, we're going to probably see, and you're starting to see it in good neighborhoods and good buildings, significant rent increases. So for example, Skyline, which is at MacArthur BART, rents are up 15% from October to today. We're buying a building, which is a great deal. Corebridge spent $106 million to build it. We're paying $45 million to buy it, right? That building, when I started getting into contract, was 87% occupied. That same building, 6 months later, is 97% occupied. In other words, you're seeing a tremendous amount of occupancy growth, which is a precursor to rent growth. So I think you could see a scenario where Oakland rents move by 20% in the next 18 months. So, unfortunately, my investment committee, I think, will shoot me if I try and put too many more dollars into Oakland. But, I think in terms of where will you see Oakland will go from the worst performing market to the best performing market in the country probably over the next 18 months.
Very good. So staying with you, Riaz, one of the next questions is, okay, so you see this demand, you're predicting what's going to happen because we're out of the Bay Area, but interest rates are high, price of energy is going up, price of gas. So how do you balance that opportunity with all these potential market disruptions?
Well, what was great about America for the last 80 years, it was a nice, predictable place, right? You don't go bomb Iran, you don't go kidnap somebody out of Venezuela. You just try and make a dollar, right? And then we have an administration who's like, you know what? We're going to bomb Iran, we're going to kidnap somebody, and we're going to take the three foundations of what made this country great for the last 80 years and throw them away, right? And so, having a schizophrenic administration makes business planning difficult at a local level. And then those of us who live in the People's Republic of California have the benefit of a schizophrenic federal administration and something at the local level that looks like a cartoon. Like you can't make this stuff up, right? I think, what's good for our business, right, is look, we have the AI effect and the Lurie effect. And my joke about California is, look, we'll put up with being overregulated, we'll put up with being overtaxed, but it can't also be a miserable place to live. And out here at Bishop Ranch, this is always a beautiful place to be, but in places like downtown San Jose, downtown Oakland, downtown San Francisco, it wasn't a beautiful place to live for the last 7 years, right? And so, like with the Lurie effect in San Francisco and AI, you basically have the engines of the local engines of growth working in your favor, right? And at the end of the day, Bay Area real estate cycles follow tech cycles. And we fundamentally are going to have all three levers moving in our favor. We have a tech cycle in our favor, we have a moderation of governance moving in our favor, and we have a return to work and a return to California working in our favor. And so when I'm thinking about investing, I'm trying to ignore a little bit kind of like the national macro trends, and I'm trying to think about, hey, what are the local forces driving occupancy, number one? And number two, what we're trying to think about is, look, if you think that your cost of capital could go up because you're going to have more inflation, you basically have to be thinking about investments where your margin is higher, right? So looking at, skinny margin deals just doesn't work, right? Which makes it very difficult to make new development pencil. So as a focus, we're much more focused on value add, distressed deals, et cetera, as opposed to building ground up housing, which had been our focus for the prior decade.
Very good. So Alex, same question. And then if you could bring into it, what you're doing, something interesting here is what you're doing with energy. So not only do you face all the high interest rates and market disruptions and energy, but you have some unique solutions.
Sure, yeah, and our business is quite different from Riaz's because he goes out and is opportunistic. He just bought this great building in Oakland, or he's about to, and I've kind of got what I've got, and it's not, it can't
Doesn't
really
look too bad.
Yeah, well, appreciate that, but there's not a lot of pivotability other than on site. So we're not seeing the J curve, unfortunately, on office. Office is a weird product type because the tenants are very sticky. And Ed's been doing this a lot longer than I have. He knows it. It's hard to convince somebody to pick their office up and move localities. Now, there's a lot of businesses that are out of business and don't have any money to build TIs, so that's a tailwind we have. But it happens relatively slow out here. We've done a lot to try and remove that friction by turnkeying offices for people. We have design services. We'll move your furniture. We'll buy you new furniture. We'll put in your bubbly water machine or whatever thing you want in the office. But these things help sort of mitigate that after the conversation started, and getting someone to make that decision when they really don't know how many people are coming to the office is difficult. Another piece of that is that we offer a lot of overflow spaces, so we help people to get smaller, which is not something we exactly try to do in our early years of leasing office, but helping people be 10 or 20% smaller and overflow into conference rooms we have in the building is an effective way of marketing space. We're trying to control costs. Labor costs is difficult. We operate a union shop here. I believe in union work, and we have had real success at it because we have a workforce that's been at Bishop Ranch for 10, 20, 30 years. And so they're well-trained. They know our people. They have great training from the union. I wish that unions would focus more on the training and the value add that they provide to their workers over politics. But that is what it is. We live in California, as Riaz said.
The phrase is only in California.
Yeah. So, there's stories about that, but it's probably too long to share. But we have a great union group here who's been here for a long time. Anyway, what I mean by that is it's hard to control that cost because they have their CBA and all that. Energy is a major cost for Bishop Ranch, and what we've done is brought in a partner to build solar systems with Tesla battery storage, and it's amazing seeing the flattening of our energy curves at the office buildings. We provide about 80% of our power through solar and battery, and we purchased it on a power purchase agreement, so an investor paid for it, and we have a rate that was below PG&E's rate in 2019 when we did the deal, and it grows at 1% per year. So that's a way for us of creating stability in a market that's not very stable, as Riaz said. We know for the next 20 years we're going to have 1% power increases, which is great. And we're trying to find ways to do that without reducing any quality, because at the same time we want to create the best tenant experience. And we're doing that through some technological advances in the buildings with BMS and other things that help keep people conditioned at the temperature they want. As I said, the office workers of the 80s and 90s were less particular as the people today, and so we're trying to cater to those needs while also controlling cost, which is a balance.
Very good. So I'm going to stay with you, Alex. We're going to kind of combine the last two questions because of time. So we have an audience with very good local leaders in the city and county level. What advice, and the market is rapidly changing, the kinds of buildings have to change to accept the new tenants, et cetera. So what can the cities do to be helpful in this partnership where we attract these new businesses, process, et cetera, approvals?
Yeah, I would say, we have it very, we have an easier time with this because we have been working with the city since before the city was here. Bishop Branch was in the county when it was bought in '78. The city of San Ramon was founded in '83. So since the early '80s, we've been working with them. We actually had a provision that my dad was worried that the plan checkers and everybody wouldn't be as efficient at the local level, so he kept this provision that we could switch back to the county at every time, and at any time. And Candace knows I bent her ear about trying to do a minor subdivision in my neighborhood in Diablo, and I think we're going to stick with City of San Ramon. So sorry about that, but yeah, sorry for the dig. I said I got 6,000 units approved in less time than it took to subdivide my grandma's property. So anyway, so the City of San Ramon's been excellent, and I think the county deals with a lot of stuff, so I don't fault them too much for that. But I would say that the issue is that the city you have a critical path when you're trying to deliver a project, and if the city's great, that's awesome because it's less of a headache, but we're still needing to get our utility hookups in order to build these subdivisions, and that is a major problem with when they will start designing your project, when they will bring people on site to lay the pipe or the utility or the energy, and it's becoming a major roadblock to getting projects to completion, particularly with housing. That's what we're building right now. I would also say, we have a lot of different organizations across the East Bay, and East Bay EDA being one of them. And I think all of these organizations are well run, and to the extent that they can combine together and find synergies to help advocate, to bring business here, to work with the utilities, I'd really like to see more cooperation between all these great organizations to drive this place forward. I think we, particularly in my market, I don't think it's true in Oakland, we have an issue with branding. And so each city kind of wants to be, San Ramon wants to be the best city, which of course it is. But I think as a region, we need to work together because we're all relatively small, and we need to work together more in terms of driving business this way and branding our area as the best place to grow a family, the best place to grow a business. So I'd like to see that. I know Riaz has some more specific thoughts on project delivery. So
Riaz, your turn, and we only have a few minutes left. But what Riaz is also going to talk about, besides the approval process, is what happens after the approval process.
Sure. So I think when you're thinking about a building, it's like, what are you allowed to build, right? How do you build it, or what does it take to build it, and how do you finance it? And before talking to what should change, I just want to give a big shout out to Hank Levy. Hank is the treasurer of Alameda County, and Hank and I, without Hank and the impact deposit program in Alameda County would have 200 less affordable units, and is very commendable, right? And what we did in this deal is we went to a bank. The bank needed a funding source. Alameda County deposited money using its impact deposit program, and the bank lent us the money. And I think it's one of the first buildings ever built with the impact deposit program. Is that right, Hank? And so, huge shout out to this guy. We should give him a round of applause because, so, I mean, the biggest thing to build more buildings is have people that think like Hank, right? But there's not too many people like that. But I think if the state and the wanted to do something about how do we create more housing, it's taking a big ratchet at the Uniform Building Code. This thing has become so complicated that you're basically building like a NASA rocket every time you build a building, number one. Number two, it's figuring out ways to help cities minimize the nature of upfront fees? So is there a way to finance those fees? And the third one, as it relates to condos, is the state needs to do something about the liability associated with building condos because it's impossible to get insurance. And the last thing the state needs to do is to do something that enables developers to use the deposits towards financing the project. So in most of the world, when you go to build a condo project or a townhome project or a row house project, you design the project, you pre-sell, you take the deposits, you build the project, you deliver homes, right? So it's a much more capital efficient business, and it's much lower risk because you fundamentally know the market you're selling into. This is number one. At the city level, basically, it's the idea that the cities need to stop taxing the creation of housing. And cities tax the creation of housing through impact fees, through utility fees, through, they got more fees than Imelda Marcos had shoes, right? So limiting this, I would say, is the biggest thing. And then the processing times, the processing time. So how do you take the simple permits and just approve them over the counter, right? So that you're focused on the big permits, right? And the last thing is the timing of these fees. And Ed asked me to bring this up, but the other thing is the predictable nature of what your inspectors are going to do in the field. Like we had a 144 unit building we're building in Berkeley. We just delivered it. We're almost 60% pre-leased, right? But in the process of the building was being built, and we had an inspector come through the building while we are building the building, and was questioning some of our dimensions as being too small. I mean, the building is already there. I've just spent $70 million building this building, and someone's having me measure little dimensions, right? So I think the predictability is the most important thing when you're investing, and so we need our cities and our state to create a more predictable environment and a speedier environment.
Go ahead.
I think, said in a word, being commercial is what we're looking for from these agencies, and that it's lacking. But I do want to make one other point, which is that in the 70s, 80s, 90s, there was a ton of real estate developers that made a boatload of money in the Bay Area. And I think that they would often use the excuse of it doesn't pencil or something like that to strong arm to make more money. And you ended up with this cadre of people that are now, phasing out of the business who it seemed untrue when you see what their balance sheet looks like today. And so it was just a great market in those years of building projects, and it was a lot easier, I think. You have a new generation like Riaz who is coming out and is in an environment where you need to build much higher density. And in the late 2010s, people were saying, this project doesn't pencil, we can't build it. And I think there was that lingering distrust from the prior regimes that these greedy developers are running away to the bank and they're just trying to get lower fees from the city. And what you saw during COVID is that none of these projects got built, right? Where there's been very little multifamily construction and housing delivery. And so I think it's a much more difficult financing environment. It's a much more difficult construction environment. You're building high density, which escalates both of those factors because you can't start selling any houses until the project's complete. And I think with the experience in COVID, there could be a little more trust of the development community that we're trying to do the right thing and build units, but it's a tough environment and we need help. So I think Riaz's points are excellent.
So we have only 2 minutes, so I'm going to ask for one sentence before we close. How is AI affecting you? 1 or 2 sentences.
Well, it's an amazing tool. I don't see a loss in any of my teams. We find it to be very useful for managing our projects, and it's an exciting thing. I think Riaz probably has a much more intelligent comment to make about AI. So,
yeah, I think what's cool about AI is it takes away the power of depth. So if you think about an organization, you have people that run process flows across an organization, and you have people that are responsible for a high-depth activity, right? And because you have this LLM that has this incredible wealth of knowledge or processing capacity, you're basically the people that are able to run process flows across things are less dependent upon the people that are required for a high degree of depth. Like if you want an answer on what is it going to take to entitle X, Y, and Z? You ask the Claude or the Gemini, and it's 95% right. It's probably better than anybody would have been on first glance anyways, right? So I think what's super cool about this is the people that try, right, and lean into these tools can basically fix any intellectual gap that they have in a process flow they're trying to complete. And my assistant is sitting in the front row, Ashley, who is the most amazing human being because she puts up with me every day, which is definitely a task. But the other thing that's been super cool to watch is Ashley basically figuring out how to do all these things that she never knew how to do using AI. And whether it's writing emails or LinkedIn posts or sending out invitations or all this stuff, right? Marketing stuff, ads, all these things that weren't even her job because you effectively used a series of tools is incredible. And you have other people that were like, how did Ashley do that, right? And so I think the idea is like, it really empowers people who want to lean in and try to do more than they ever realized they could. And I think of a line Bill Gates used to use, which is, it used to be the power of a combination of skill sets and how you put them together that enables teams to do more than you realize and reach outcomes that you thought were beyond possible. Now, when you put those types of people together who are willing to use the tools, I think the outcomes efficient and well-run teams will be able to reach will just be incredible.
I guess that's why I get all the follow-ups from Ashley for your meeting. I will say one comment about the market, though, just quickly. It's exciting to be in the Bay Area. Our companies move faster than any other companies. They're in technology. They're taking the positive impacts of AI, right-sizing their workforces first in the country. But all these tools are built here too. And so while the housing market has been great for the last 6 months, I think from what Riaz is saying, you can see that we're the first to cut and the first to grow. And so we're really excited about the next 12 months and what the technology he spoke to much better, but I think what it's going to bring to the Bay Area economy in terms of all the things that we're talking about is going to be fast to arrive, and we're very excited about that.
So a round of applause for our panelists. Very good. Very good.
Thank you all very, very much. We're going to continue, and I'm going to call up our next speaker, Alexander Quinn, who's Senior Director of Northern California Research at JLL. He's coming up, he doesn't want me to read his bio too much, but I'll just say very quickly, he has 20 years of planning and economic development experience and analysis, specializing in real estate development, economic forecasting, and urban regeneration. He leads commercial research for JLL, and I'm going to go ahead, Alex. Quinn, have you come on up? Here.
In terms of, I wanted to give you guys one really controversial thing, and that is really, what is NorCal, what is SoCal? This is a tough one. I know a lot of you have strong opinions about this. So I did a little Reddit search, and some people say it's that. It's like if there's Safeway and Vons tells you you're in SoCal, and Safeway tells you you're in NorCal. Does anybody know what that borderline is? Anybody? It's Bakersfield. There is a Vons in Fresno. So the debate continues, but right now this is where we define as it. And I bring it up because there's some really interesting factoids between those two. So if you think about it, it splits about 14 million in NorCal, 24 million in SoCal. And if you look at it just in terms of economic productivity, GDP per worker is about 300,000 in NorCal. In SoCal, it's about 225,000. So significantly less in Southern California. A lot of the economic activity is much stronger. Median household income obviously higher in the north. And we're a little bit older in general. Also, if you look at our forecast, Northern California is forecasted to grow. Southern California is not at the current rate. So, and just looking at like the distribution in Northern California, we would be about a population of London's metro, or the GDP of Spain is a way to think about it, somewhere between Spain and South Korea. And generally, I would just say that if you want to split it out a little bit more, the way to think about it, of course, we care about the greater Bay Area. On a population basis, we're around 7.7 million and account for roughly 20% of total population of the state. However, if you look at our economy, we account for approximately a third. So again, we really hit above our weight in terms of our population. And I think a lot of you are aware of this, but it's an interesting little factoid when you look at it, that distribution, it's fascinating. So I just want to give you that early factoid, but let's go into just overall the macro outlook. It was really interesting to hear Riaz talk about this a little bit, because the reality is yes, there is a lot of chaos associated with what's going on. And so what we anticipate in terms of the federal funds rate, which was anticipated to go down, and really, that the Trump administration made very much strong statements about reducing the federal funds rate. Well, because inflation is more enduring, and you heard about both the producer price index and the overall inflation going up. So as a result, we think it's going to stay higher for longer. And this is what happened. So we heard about Liberation Day. That actually spiked interest rates and 10-year Treasury. Well, the Iran war did exactly the same thing all over again. It spiked the 10-year Treasury. So what does that mean? Again, the cost of borrowing is again higher. So as I talked about, I think the last time, the 10-year Treasury essentially serves as the adult in the room. And the adult in the room is telling us that we're going to see interest rates stay higher for longer. So sadly, I think that means the cost of real estate, the cost of investment, all those things essentially are higher now. Or if you think about it, the price of real estate actually goes down as a result of a higher interest 10-year Treasury. However, with all that being said, JLL does do an analysis of, or survey of real estate developers, real estate managers, REITs, et cetera. And overall, our global sentiment survey as of February was up from a year prior. So there was generally a belief that investment was going to increase this year and GDP was going to grow this year. We don't know if this is going to continue based on the Iran war. As we talked about, there has been additional chaos. Chaos is not good for investment. However, if you look at overall GDP growth within, as forecasted, we're basically on pace with where we had forecast. So currently, US was around 2%. That's generally where we're running right now. Some people think it might be even higher based on additional investments in AI, mostly in the data center space. If this continues, that definitely advantages the Bay Area. So that gives you the national level forecast. Now I'll go into a little bit more on the Bay Area economy just to talk about what we're seeing. And I think last time I was here, a year ago, I talked about these 7 bets. So those 7 bets were year over year, we're going to see about 5% rent growth, which I think Riaz actually talked about, over 4% rent growth, $140 billion in VC investment, 40% of which would go to the Bay Area, $40 billion in IPO activity. AI will lease another 1.1 million square feet in San Francisco. Bay Area's office vacancy would first increase in the first half and then decrease in the second half. And unemployment would increase, but office occupancy would actually increase as well, which usually that's counterintuitive. In other words, more people would be coming to the office. And then Bay Area's labor force would grow, but population would remain flat. So those are the predictions that I had at the beginning of last year. I'll go over how well I did, and it kind of frames what's happening. So overall, this is what we saw in terms of population change in the Bay Area, pretty much flat, 14,000. Almost all that is natural population growth. So we're starting to see it fall. What's happening? International migration obviously is not growing as much as it was. Domestic outmigration is slowing. So overall, we're seeing it even out, but really it's essentially flat year over year. Last year we had a significant rebound. I want to show you what it looks like for the East Bay. Talk about flat, that's about as flat as you can get. That's within the margin of error. 427 new people. That's not really new people, that's within the margin of error. So what does this tell you? Essentially, the East Bay, Alameda, and Contra Costa County are at a zero growth rate. And I would suspect that this upcoming year, we might see this, in fact, go positive only because of domestic immigration. Really interesting is that we saw in the East Bay, in Alameda and Contra Costa County, the most domestic outmigration as a share. So 35% of Bay Area's domestic outmigration occurred from the East Bay. That's fascinating to me. I think it's driven a lot about that middle income swath, which I'll talk about in a bit. Unemployment did in fact rise and is slightly up. It's only at 4.5%, still relatively healthy. The East Bay always runs higher than the Greater Bay Area at 4.3%, but it's marginally higher, and it's not as high as one would anticipate when you hear all these announcements of layoffs from tech companies. And then this is one thing that I've been looking at. This is just overall employment change since 2016, anchored to 2016, and looking at it in comparison to the US, California. And the Bay Area has been laggards, but I want to explain what's going on here. This is not a reflection of GDP performance. This is really a limit of housing production. Without housing production, we don't have labor force coming into our market, and as a result, we really can't create much more jobs in our market. I always talk about this economic development tied to the Bay Area is entirely driven by our housing production because we just don't have the same amount of labor force that we could have within the Greater Bay Area. And this is a little complicated. I know you are all a lot of you are economic development professionals. Some of you are public policy people, but this is fascinating. So on the top line is labor force. So those are the people who are looking for work. On the bottom line is employment. All right? So historically, there's always going to be more people looking for work than there are jobs. Over time. This is for the 9-county Bay Area. Look what happened. During the pandemic, we saw actual employment in the 9-county Bay Area higher than labor force. That's crazy sauce. That does not happen. What's going on? That was remote work. So we had a decoupling in the Greater Bay Area of place of work and place of residence. And it showed up in our numbers. It was crazy. We saw fewer people participating in the labor force than there were actually workers in the Bay Area, as defined. So people at Apple HQ, Meta, etc. There were more people working there officially, as recorded, than people living in the Greater Bay Area. Now, some of those could have been people coming from San Joaquin County, but what we really think was happening was an infusion of remote workers. And now, when we talk about these layoffs, you have to talk about the reduction of the remote workforce. So when we hear layoff announcements, a lot of us are concerned, but it's not showing up in the unemployment numbers as much or in the labor force numbers as much. Really what we think is happening, and this is just a thought, we've had a lot of conversations with state economists, but what we think is happening is that a lot of those losses are occurring or manifesting outside of the Bay Area. So people are not really losing their job as much in the Bay Area as they are in places like Lake Tahoe, Montana, Tampa, all these remote jobs. So that's not having as meaningful as an economic subtraction as it is happening elsewhere. And this is another fascinating thing. This is always a delayed information set. This is QECW data. Basically, this is looking at average wage change of tech workers. And usually, when you look at overall, you would look at the wage gain of tech workers would be aligned with the growth of tech workers. That didn't happen this time. So what we saw was a 25% increase in average wages. A lot of that is on the top end, but at the same time, we saw a 6% drop in information tech workers. So that doesn't normally happen as well. So this goes back to this whole K-shaped economy, or K-shaped recovery. So if you're a high-end AI employee, the average job posting salary for that employee is over $280,000 a year. But if you are a junior programmer, you're not finding a job. So you're having a two bifurcated labor market is what you're seeing. And that's also showing up in our housing. So if you look at Mill Valley, for example, housing pricing there, very expensive, and pricing going up. If you go to Presidio Heights, if you just saw there was a house that sold well above asking, that was a $20 million home that sold for $23 million. Again, we're seeing this bifurcation or this K-shaped economy that's happening as some of these Anthropic employees sell some of their shares, and then they go out and they buy very expensive homes. So this is definitely something we're experiencing within the Greater Bay Area. And part of it is driven by this. This is venture capital investment in the 9-county Bay Area, and it shows something that is beyond belief. I want to stop for a moment. I mean, so if I look back historically, U.S. Bay Area's share of VC investment be around 35, 37%. Last year I said it'd be around 40%. It was 52%. It was half, 178 billion. Year to date, it's 236 billion. 79% of US investment. San Francisco alone counts for 48% of global VC investment year to date. 48%. So if you look back, historically, San Francisco accounts for about 7%. This is a very specific time of exceptionally concentrated investment in venture capital investment in the Bay Area. It is in only a few companies, but even if you strip out those companies, we're still seeing heightened levels of venture capital investment driven by artificial intelligence. This just shows what it looks like. This is actually only Q1 data, so it looks a little bit different. It's not as updated as the slide I just showed you, but it just tells you the distribution. So San Francisco, $170 billion. The next major city outside of the Bay Area is New York at 15.7. So, or if you want to take Beijing, 7.4 billion. The East Bay is at 2.5. That's actually on average where we would be. But it just it gives you a view of just how concentrated that investment is. All right. So we talked about housing, and I think one of the things that I did want to bring up was that we are definitely seeing a shift. So and I think Riaz brought this up pretty well, pricing is going up, occupancy is going up, the East Bay generally healthier. Annual rent growth for the East Bay was only 2.9%. That's actually not reflecting what's happening in Oakland right now, year over year. This is RealPage data. There's a whole host of data that's out there. So I don't know what Riaz is quoting, but there's different data sources, and they actually conflict with one another right now. It seems like RealPage is basically taking a lot of the bigger projects, apartment buildings, so they might have a little bit, it's more like Class A buildings, but it gives you an idea of where rents are. San Francisco going through some real significant rent growth. So this is year over year rent change, and it looks at it by all the major US markets, and you can see immediately what is obvious. The Bay Area is on the left side of that ledger. What's happening? The concentration of place of work and place of residence and employment growth is happening within San Francisco. It's really concentrated, and we saw on a real rent growth or net effective rent growth year over year around 15.6%. That is a very high number, and you will see it in certain neighborhoods even more so. Oakland at 10.4%, a lot of that is concessions runoff, but now we're starting to see top line growth in that market, and that market will see significant growth as well. Also Mid-Peninsula, which is San Mateo County, significant East Bay, all the way over there to the right. Again, as Riaz mentioned, that is going to spill over. So first, you'll see it in the gateway markets. What happens when you're an employee? You go, oh, I got to find a place to work. I'm going to a place to live next to my work. That's what you do. Then you go find a place to live after you've settled down. And so what it'll happen is it'll spill over into all the secondary markets, and we're already starting to see it. So Alameda, San Leandro, Walnut Creek, elsewhere is where you're going to see it spill over. And this is what it looks like. So if you look at it from a year-over-year rent growth by submarket, and I put some San Francisco submarkets just to show how strong this looks. Dogpatch, does people know where the Dogpatch is? Yeah, okay, so like where's the Dogpatch? So Dogpatch is, if you know Mission Bay, which is, so it goes, Chase Arena. Dogpatch is just to the south of Chase Arena. That area is, of course, where OpenAI is located. And it's no surprise that rent growth has grown by 22% year over year in that market. Mission Bay, obviously, where OpenAI is located, 18%. Downtown San Francisco was really suffering during the pandemic. Now has seen a rebound. Anthropic is growing dramatically. In the East Bay, you look at downtown Oakland and Temescal, which all makes sense. So proximity to transit, ability to get immediately into the downtown, that is showing up. On the bottom end of this, you can see Walnut Creek at 1.3%. As I mentioned, I think those markets will also grow. This is something that I think scares us if you are in economic development, and also on the investment side, if you're a landowner, gets us excited. So one of the things that we recognize is that traditionally there's a relationship between income growth and rent growth. Those two things go really well together statistically over 2 decades. They decoupled during the pandemic, but they're coming back together, and it's showing us something of where rent growth will happen and where it will not. So if you look at a national level, it's, income growth was essentially 28%. Effective rent growth was around 29%. So that's actually showing that things should flatten out at a national level. However, if you go to the Bay Area, rent growth within the Bay Area since 2020 to 2025 was 9%, whereas income growth was 25%. What does that mean? That means that there's a lot of room for rent to grow even further, especially concerning the limited amount of supply in the market. So as a result, we think rents are going to continue to climb within the greater Bay Area. So income growth outpacing rent. And you can see on the right, you can see Chicago, some of these other markets. Those markets are likely to be more stagnant going forward. The ones on the left are more likely to experience rent growth. So this is the other thing that I'd like to talk about is it sucks to try to buy a house now in the Bay Area. And it sucks even more. And if you do the equation, the idea that you'd buy a home and the opportunity cost of renting versus owning is showing you should probably rent longer and it's showing up in the numbers. Like the average, this is at a national average, the average age now of a renter is, or the median homeowner is now 40, which is much older than what we used to. So the result is that we're just seeing it push us more towards renting. And the barriers are further across. So the discount to home ownership is even more so now. If we were able to get condos into the market, we might be able to make this a little bit more accessible. But right now, people are going to rent for a much longer period. So in terms of office, I would just say that we're not at a normal state, even still. Everybody thinks that we've reached an equilibrium. We have not reached an equilibrium. We're still seeing return to office trends. We're still seeing people feeling like they're at risk of losing their job, and as a result, they're coming back to the office. Investors come to me all the time and they ask me, what amenities can I offer to bring my employees back? And the answer I give is probably the least politically correct answer that I will give. And I say the biggest reason to get people back into the office is fear. Fear is actually the way to get people back in, and it has worked. And the truth is that as unemployment continues to rise and layoffs continue to be announced, the result is that more people are coming back into the office. So, sadly, that is the reality, is because the convenience of working from home is so incredible that generally, even by offering massages and concerts and all the things that they're ping pong, that doesn't seem to result in getting people back in the office, but the actuality of losing their jobs has actually shifted it. So when you look at it from the change in vacancy, what we saw is, of course, the tech sector was most ready to get rid of their offices and go remote. And that really showed up early on in the pandemic. And if you look, it was basically all the tech markets where we saw a height in the increase in office vacancy across the board. What we're seeing in downtown Oakland and in the 680 corridor, again, that dynamic is playing out. Those are spillover markets to San Francisco and Silicon Valley. What we have noticed, though, San Francisco's taking a turn. San Francisco's already started to see a net reduction. In fact, last quarter, San Francisco alone accounted for a third of the national positive net absorption for office. So massive amount of swing the other direction, and that number is going to come down even further over the year. So we're going to see a reduction of supply in San Francisco. However, in downtown Oakland, we expect the vacancy to continue to rise. I'm going to talk a little bit about what's happening in the East Bay because I think that's what you care about. This is just big block leasing. So these are leases over 40,000 square feet. We've already on pace to exceed what we did last year. We did pretty well at 1.4 million square feet. We're going to continue that into this year based on our active tenant requirements. We think that we're going to be well above 1.4 this year. And it's telling us a lot about where people are going, or big firms are going, and where they're not. So if you went back to 2017 and 2018, a lot of it was Oakland, a lot of it was tech, a lot of it was Oakland, Concord, what we would define as like the spillover markets. Where we're seeing now, it's Dublin, it's Walnut Creek, it's San Ramon, where the leasing activity is occurring. So it's much more focused in those specific markets. It's also telling us a little bit about the type of users. So before, about a quarter of each of those requirements were technology and finance. Now, that's a lot of it is healthcare. Seen a lot in the healthcare sector, so Sutter Health and others. That's where we're seeing a lot of growth. And where it's showing up is, it's, I would say, the strongest market right now in terms of activity is downtown Walnut Creek. You can look at across the different vacancy rates. San Ramon's will come down just because of reduction in supply, as we were talked about with Alex. But overall, I would say that some of these numbers are going to increase over time. And then in the inner East Bay, I would just say that downtown Oakland's going to continue to see some more hemorrhaging. Berkeley has been the outperformer. On the East Bay, really fascinating to see what's happening in industrial leasing. So industrial leasing starting to rebound. We saw a decline really before the election, and that led to an overall reduction in demand. But what's happening now is that because of the increase in supply, we're at a pretty healthy vacancy rate, but there's no new supply coming online, which is a good sign. And the thing that's getting us all excited is this. We're seeing a lot of manufacturing requirements in the East Bay. So it's around 2.3 million square feet. That's the highest it's been since we've been covering it. There are a lot of it you've heard about in Hayward, but overall, I would tell you that of that manufacturing requirement, a large share of that is requiring 4,000 amps of power. In our survey of available supply, that's about 2.3% of available industrial supply in the East Bay has 4,000 amps of power. So very limited, which could lead to new construction. Silicon Valley, a lot of that could eventually spill over. I would just note that JLL includes Newark and Fremont in Silicon Valley. So a lot of that is there. That's where a lot of that demand is occurring. But I think you guys asked about this, so I thought I'd bring it up. This is what Anthropic put out, I think about 2 months ago, and presented this in a white paper and scared the bejesus out of all of us of how LLMs could affect white-collar jobs It just showed what the infiltration was now and what it could be. Now, I just want to caveat this, that this is partially driven by their valuation. You know, this disruption is part of their value, and that value is expressing a certain amount of economic productivity that disrupts everything from legal to computer and math, etc. We don't know how meaningful these impacts are. There's what's called Jevons paradox. That would tell you that maybe it's not as strong as you would think. But based on this, there's a lot of impacts to a lot of different jobs. And what we've seen is the back office jobs are already falling in the US. They're already decreasing. And what we're seeing is, knowledge workers growing as a share of total workforce within the greater US. However, in terms of exposure by market, guess which market has the least amount of exposure? It's no surprise because we're such an expensive place. You don't have as many back office jobs here. So Silicon Valley and San Francisco lead the nation if you look at occupation distribution in terms of its impact. So lots of other markets, Phoenix, Orlando, Houston, Atlanta, those are more impacted by at least the first order effects of AI as we anticipate. Now, to say that we know precisely it's going to be 35 or 40%, I think that's absurd. We don't know precisely how AI will impact different positions within the economy, but we do think that it's at least going to impact rote systems initially, and that's why we looked at this evaluation. The other thing that, of course, is really important is where's the distribution of AI talent. That AI talent, of course, is here. It's 23%. Based on Lightcast data or LinkedIn data, it tells us that essentially more than a fifth of the nation's total AI workforce is in the Bay Area. That's incredibly concentrated. The next one would be New York at 9%. So very much why we're seeing so much investment in our region. And because of the growth in AI jobs that are requiring AI skills, we are seeing more growth in this segment. In fact, if you just took the 5 top AI firms in San Francisco, their job postings went up about 250% year over year. And it's showing up in things like AI startups and talent pool. You can see that San Francisco and San Jose are way anomalies compared to everyone else in every sense. This is a culture, I try to bring this conversation to Portland. They thought we were crazy. Have you guys heard of the 996? Yes, okay. So 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., 6 days a week. This is a real thing. We do occasionally have to tell our tenants that they cannot bring mattresses into their offices. And this is because they are working so many hours. There's a real race going on amongst this crew, and they're working into the dead of night. That is a real dynamic that's occurring. So the work-life balance thing is not really happening in lots of places in San Francisco at this moment. And I talked about this last year, but I think I'll talk about it more because it's becoming more prominent. Of course, this is really creepy. This is Figure AI doing your house chores. You may have heard of Melania Trump walking out with the robot who was talking about education. That was, in fact, a Figure AI robot. But it's not just Figure AI. There's robots everywhere. Just an announcement today that Rivian was going to do a major investment into robots. So this, I think, is just, yes, that is creepy. You might have heard, yeah, that's so creepy. There's also Neo, which is even creepier because the robot does not have an LLM attached to it, so there's someone remote controlling into your home as they do chores, which I think is even creepier. But still, that's the idea behind this. And the idea is that we are in a new revolution, manufacturing revolution within the greater US. And in fact, the Bay Area is poised to take advantage of that. So whereas before we had shifted to the right towards software, we are now going into a new intelligent automation segment. And that's pushing us more into the hardware and manufacturing side, which has a massive consequence in terms of the type of space we need and how it's impacting everything from power requirements across the Bay Area. So, and I think I just showed you that slide that said, Anthropic, here's all the impacts it'll have. And you could have seen, if you were being really close, looking closely, you would have seen, oh, blue collar workers, I should send my son to welding school. Nope, that is not what they're thinking. The robotics sector, the VC world is definitely trying to disrupt everything associated with blue collar as well. Production, healthcare, food serving, all those segments, the robots are coming. They're trying to get that segment as well, and that's where a lot of investment is going in. And this is our forecasted investment for the Greater Bay Area. It was 4.7 last year. We're on pace to do around 10 billion this year. I think that's a conservative estimate based on what we just heard recently from Rivian. And I wanted to show you this map. So this was 2020. This is the footprint of robotics companies in 2020. 14 companies, 450,000 square feet. And I'll do this really quickly. 21, 2 million. 22, 3.7. 23, 24, 25, and this is 26 year to date. We're at 9.7 million square feet, 240 tenants. You can see now the East Bay more, Hayward definitely growing. That company in Livermore, of course, got acquired by Caterpillar. A lot of you are aware of that. That's going to be kaput. But we're definitely seeing push up in the East Bay more, especially Berkeley. So flex R&D demand in these spaces are generally 8 to 15,000 square feet, but a lot of them are much bigger. Archer Aviation's growing a lot. We're seeing Zipline grow as well. So these were my bets. These were my 7 bets. Year-over-year rent growth, yes. $140 billion in VC investment, yes. $40 billion in IPO activity, yes. 1.1 million square feet in San Francisco, yes. Yes to increase vacancy, then decreasing vacancy, yes to unemployment rising, and also yes to population. So that is embarrassingly good. I will never be that good again. And actually, I got so much crap over this because everybody said these weren't big bets. These were itsy-bitsy bets, Quinn. So, so this year, I wanted to go a little bit further and a little bit harder. So I think we're going to see rent growth over 5% this year. I said more moderate VC investment. I am wrong. It's going to be a lot more. $100 billion in IPO activity, yes. AL will lease 1.9. Cerebras just, they IPO today. So we'll see how that goes. But we should probably see some pretty significant at the end of this year. And then 1.9 million square feet in San Francisco, actually probably exceed that number based on what we saw. Anthropic just expanded another 500,000 square feet within this year. Bay Area industrial vacancy will decrease 100 basis points. I think that's going to happen. Technology employment will grow. That's a big bet. I think a lot of people are asking whether that's going to happen. I think we're going to see it based on what we're seeing in expanding AI workforce. Population growth, that's also a big bet based on the decline in international migration. So that has to be domestic inflow. And then robotic and drone leasing exceeds 1.5 million square feet. We're definitely going to surpass that number for the Bay Area. We will exceed it. And then a new R&D flex building breaks ground with power. Yes, I think that'll happen this year. So this is me, I guess, or the replacement of me in the future, but there you go.
We will have time for a few audience questions. So I'm going to go ahead and have our team help with passing a few mics for Quinn to answer a couple of things. And I'll give one to Xion and one to Carly.
Excellent presentation again, Alexander. Where do you see agribiotech and agri-robots in this?
Yeah, I mean, on the agriculture side, I think there definitely was, it's in all segments. So I just say the robotics edge we're just seeing the beginning of this, to be honest. And the path to revenue is the biggest question. It could be 4 to 5 years out, so it's the patience of that venture capital revenue. But the expectation is that it's going to hit all elements. In terms of biotech itself, biotech has been relatively flat over the last few years and really suffered from an infusion of too much supply. So really fascinating what's happening is that some of the biotech spaces are being converted right now into flex R&D spaces to accommodate what? Robots, because they have power. A lot of them have 2,000 amps plus of power, those buildings. So the crappier buildings are the ones that are being converted to flex R&D. Most of them, of the flex R&D or robotics requirements, don't want anything more than 2 stories of building. They don't want to be multi-stories. There's a few exceptions that are happening in downtown San Francisco or in San Francisco, but most of them don't want anything larger than 2 stories. And as a result, what we're seeing is they want crappier lab space sometimes, or they want to be in new flex R&D space. So we'll see both. There's new construction that's likely going to happen in San Francisco, believe it or not, for a flex R&D project.
Go ahead, Liz. We can hear you.
I'm just curious, on the point you were last making, we saw that big influx of development for life sciences when that was hot, and now we have the oversupply. And I saw every economic developer in this room are all taking pictures of the leases and the AI and robotics opportunities. What's your sense of, could we be building too much now or trying to cater too quickly to the R&D flex to support robotics and then see a similar buzz with AI, or do you feel more bullish on that growing?
Well, I'm bullish on it growing, but I also think there'll be complete failure of at least 80% of those firms, just like they have in the past. That's the normal thing that would occur amongst all those firms. You see an AI boom, then you see an AI burst, or a tech boom and a tech burst. Those two things happen at the same time. And then what happens after that is usually a consolidation, and those firms grow at a significantly larger clip. So yes, the two things happen, and we're going to see too much overlap, too many robot companies doing the same thing. They will not have a path to revenue, and they will fail. It's happened many times over again, and I feel it right now, especially. And if they don't have a path to revenue, they all can't get defense contracts. Some of them are going to have to sell to households and others, and whether or not they're able to successfully do that is a big question. However, do I think robots are an enduring trend that are going to be part of our life in the future? Absolutely, just as the internet was, just as AI is.
Yeah. Okay. So the chart that you showed about the robotic leases, how does that split with humanoids? And can you talk a little bit about what you're seeing or what you're seeing or thinking for revenue projections for humanoids?
That's a good question. I don't have that broken out, but I do want to be clear. When I talk about robotics, I'm including robotics, drone in that segment, which includes Waymo, Archer, Joby Aviation, Zipline, and those are not all humanoid robotics. They're across a whole segment. And probably our largest active requirement right now is Archer Aviation, which is obviously not a humanoid. It's a drone robotics company. So it's, I think that's one of the things. And in our definition, as defined by JLL, robotics includes both the transportation side and the robotics of humanoid. Those things are intertwined together. And really, why is it happening within the Bay Area? It's because you need both the software side and the hardware side. I didn't talk about that. So, I mentioned 23% of AI professionals are here. We also have a really strong mechanical engineering base here as well. Those two things need to converge for really robotics to work. And that's why it's happening here above all else. So it will go Bay Area, then Boston by a wide margin. And it's kind of shocking because historically we always think of robots in Boston Dynamics and Boston. It's actually happening here more. And in fact, some of the Southern California firms that started in SoCal because of aeronautics, they're moving up to Northern California because they need AI professionals. So that's the shift. But again, to your specific question, I don't know precisely what the breakdown is.
And what about revenue?
Yeah, so the revenue question is a big one. And of course, VC moves in based on an idea of disruption and its impacts, and the revenue is something they think about from a GDP impact, but they haven't necessarily figured out that whole equation yet. What we do know is that a lot of them are getting into the defense contracts, and that's where we see a lot of growth. And the Ukraine war and even the Iran war has informed a lot of the Defense Department, and that's growing the opportunities for some of these companies. So Saildrone and others, they're all looking in this segment. And even Archer Aviation, I don't know if you've ever gone to their website. They have their passenger drone website. Go to their defense website. Two very different looking websites. So, there's really an interesting dynamic happening where they recognize an opportunity there.
Oh, here. I think I have something. Sorry. I'm just going to talk. Okay, I have it. Yolanda Finchenko, I'm with iGate Development Corporation, and we also run Daybreak Labs. I'm curious about what I didn't see, given the demand for energy. Where are the energy tech companies? Where are they growing? Is this all in Houston, or is any of that happening in the Bay Area?
Some of it's happening in the Bay Area, but because of the permitting issues, that we're seeing a lot of them choose not to do any production in the California at all. So Oklo, are you familiar with Oklo as a company? They're a publicly traded company. They're a small nuclear company. Their first, they did a national site selection. That national site selection has them in, I believe, Tennessee. They chose Nashville. That's been a pretty consistent theme amongst most of the energy firms that we have worked with. They've chosen not to locate within California.
Thank you. Can you just expand on what the permitting issues are, like the biggest barriers?
I believe it's mostly environmental rules that's limiting, and the regulatory rules about that, as well as the CEC, as I understand it. Those two things are making it difficult. Seismic? No, CEC, the California Energy Commission.
Sorry, I guess my point is that seismic may also be another.
Oh, right. Potentially, yes. But they could potentially land themselves in California otherwise, but some of them, we remember back when Genentech decided Vacaville was the location they would go to because that was the closest they could be to their R&D facility out of the seismic zone. Now, probably that decision is not made in the state of California and goes outside of California.
Hello. Oh, sorry. Right here.
Oh, yeah.
I'm Vice Mayor Marisol Rubio for the City of San Ramon here. So my question is sort of borrowing a phrase that was mentioned by one of our residents once, is the inevitability of progress. And so we see clearly that the wheels are turning very fast. Things are unfolding faster perhaps than how we can respond to the socioeconomic impact as well as environmental impact that all of this is having. You talked about rent going up, but yet there's a bottleneck in the market for labor. So it's not painting a very pretty picture. How are we going to resolve that? What are some of the discussions going on to resolve that? Even universities are starting to see a sort of a contraction, because many people are wondering, is my degree going to give me the future that my parents had, So there's just, and one of the things here in California that we struggle with is, the number of people who are unhoused, and a situation that, from what I'm seeing, is that could go up. So how are we going to deal with that? What are some of the discussions to make sure that we have social, environmental, we're being ethical and responsible in what we're doing?
Okay, so that's a really tough question. I'll try to answer just a couple things that happened. I've been sending to my daughter, who is 17, who's very sad about AI and scared of AI, about an economist named Torsten Slok. I don't know if you guys know who he is. He works for Apollo Global, and he talks about Jevons paradox, which is the more that you get additional productivity, the more that we produce, the value that's created that actually creates more labor. And I send her these articles. They're only weekly charts, but they give some hope of what would be future employment opportunities. Like, for example, he shows a slide of QuickBooks, and everybody thought accountants were dead. And actually, there are more accountants than there were before QuickBooks than after QuickBooks. So the point is that we don't necessarily know the disruption effects of AI, but historically, if you look at productivity and productivity gains, we see employment growth. That's one thing. The second thing is that government can play an incredibly important role in the equity discussion that you just brought up. Because you were right, the K-shaped economy is real. As far as we can tell, that is a continuation. And we're hearing a lot about how AI is going to create abundance, but abundance to whom is the biggest question. And unfortunately, I think that lands on the hands of government. And I don't know in the current administration how that's going to work out, but maybe in the long term, that's something that could really change.
Hi, Alex. Hank Levy, Alameda County. Do you think the vacancy of office buildings, we should focus on alternative uses? And the only two ideas I've got are with lots of people, residential, or no people, data centers. Should we be thinking about it? Are there other uses? Anybody measuring anything?
Yeah, so on alternative uses for offices, there are certain markets, and I'm not picking on Walnut Creek. I'm just going to bring up Walnut Creek as an example. The Shadelands. The Shadelands is a Class B office, pretty antiquated space, really designed not for the modern era of office space. That is a good opportunity for residential conversion. There are other higher quality assets within Walnut Creek itself, which is outperforming the market, that should stay as office indefinitely. So I think there's really a difference of the type of quality of office space that is out there that's really going to inform that decision. We have a lot of schlocky stuff out there. 2-story drive up, 5 spaces per 1,000, parked office spaces that were intended for really back office uses that are really antiquated and have an opportunity to be converted probably to residential and to other uses. And I think there's a lot of opportunity in those buildings and those to be converted. Whereas there also are these other spaces that could be even more amenitized, like this building, or spaces like this that in fact can continue as office operations indefinitely.
Just one more follow-up. Are data centers possible in urban centers instead of, how we see them now and across the rural landscape?
We're talking a lot about data centers in edge computing as a new opportunity. Data centers right now, a lot of us are saying, well, we need 250 megawatts. In California, that's not something we would do. Normally, you'd want to be at 49 megawatts or lower. And that is an opportunity within the state of California. However, it's a low employment use. And the other issue that you deal with in the state of California is Prop 13. Prop 13 does not allow you to reassess the data center each and every year. The reason Georgia and some of these other states are so keen to have these data centers is because of their assessed value and the underlying property tax revenue with that, with no additional maintenance costs, essentially, of operating, you don't have to police a data center. So the result is they are very keen of that revenue. Whereas the state of California, it does not create a ton of revenue within the state. And so therefore, it's not as much of an economic fiscal driver as, say, an office building is. So there's a different trade-offs by state. Prop 13 really would tell us that probably data centers are not as compelling of a use as, say, an office building, housing, or other uses.
Your map showed the changing leases in terms of robotics in the Bay Area, but I didn't see the one in Richmond with, I believe, OpenAI.
Yeah, that's because it's covered.
Ah.
It's up there. It's just
Okay.
to the north of it, yeah, it's in there.
So my question is, like with the older industrial assets along the northern waterfront of Contra Costa County, how do you see, like the projections that you have in advanced manufacturing impacting up there, especially with some of the older space, and maybe also like around data centers as well?
Well, keep in mind that Open is going into that newer building, the Brookfield building. They're going into the newer supply. They're not going into the Ford building, as I understand it. But the idea is that generally they're open to any type of flex R&D space that has available power and access to high quality talent. That's why you're seeing the Dog Patch area, the area just to the south, all like Potrero in San Francisco. That area's vacancy amongst the flex R&D space is near zero because the labor pool is in that zone. Generally not a node for its industrial space. But we're seeing that it's actually spilling over into San Mateo County in South San Francisco because of that labor pool. Now, to the extent that that labor pool hits east was really driven by the ferry is taking people over from San Francisco to Richmond. I don't know how much of an enduring trend that is. We're trying to think about that because obviously we are the ones leasing Lane Partners building in Berkeley Commons, and we want to market that space with that opportunity. It just hasn't sold as well because some people really don't they see the bridge as such a barrier, it's limiting the marketability. But ultimately, we do think it is an opportunity.
So last question with Mark.
Yeah, I'm Mark. I'm with the community colleges. I work on the manufacturing workforce. When you're talking to these companies in the robotics area, do you see any pitch that the skilled trades infrastructure we have here in the Bay Area for training is a positive to them, and can we leverage that working with the community colleges in some way?
It's not come up very often because they're all doing pilot production at this point. So they don't seem to have issues. I would say one of the fascinating things when we do national site search analysis, we are definitely looking at labor pool a lot more. But in the Bay Area, that's not as much of a constraint. We don't have a blue collar labor pool problem as much as some of these other southeast cities do, or even the Midwest does. So that's been a really fascinating sell for our region vis-a-vis some of these other markets. But what I would tell you is that generally we've been able to find the proper skilled workforce in the greater Bay Area. The Bay Area, of course, is just the cost. And of course, it's just, the cost of living within the greater Bay Area. Once they get to a scaling perspective, their site selection generally has them moving out of the Bay Area.
All right, let's go ahead and give it up for Quinn. Thank you very, very much. I know some of you are trying to probably run out, but before you do, I'm going to call up my friend Pete DePascalis from Southwest Airlines, because one thing we didn't talk about this morning is how the cost of fuel's going up, which means the cost of airline tickets is also going up, but not if you happen to be a winner for today's raffle. So let me go ahead and get us back to where we are with our slides on that. And Pete, I'm going to go ahead and give you the stage here for a minute. Yep.
Awesome.
We sure did. I'll help you with the name that you give.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Quinn, thank you for your insights. I really appreciate every year. I love hearing what you have to say about what's going on here in the East Bay. I'm also very happy that none of your slides included robots on pilots or flight attendants. So Definitely appreciate that. Thank you, East Bay EDA, for the invitation. It's always an honor to be with leaders driving this region forward. Southwest is a proud, longstanding partner in the East Bay. Oakland is home to one of our most important stations and will remain deeply committed to connecting this community to opportunity, to family, and to places that matter most. This past year has been one of transformation for Southwest. We've made significant changes to how we operate and how we are showing up for our customers every day. We are truly grateful for the loyalty and the patience that each traveler has shown in choosing Southwest, in flying the East Bay Way through all of this. This trust really means a lot to us, and events like this really mean a lot to us as well too. And we definitely appreciate the East Bay EDA for allowing us to be here.
All right, let's give it up for Pete. And most importantly, we're going to get to our next, to our winner, which is that one right there, if you want. We got a tough name up here, so.
Oh my gosh, Stephen Bader?
No. It is not me, trust me.
It is not Stephen.
Let's try Thiruaman, last name Kupasani. Ah, there we go. We have our winner. We're actually going to be providing these to you digitally, but please come up to the stage. We're going to have you take a photo. We're going to be emailing you your tickets, but let's have you get up here with Pete.
I'm so sorry. I would your name is Fraser.
All right. Great. Thank you all very, very much. Thank you all for coming today. We really appreciate it. We do still have, I think, food and refreshments outside. Continue to network until 11 a.m. Thank you all for coming. We'll see you again soon. Take care.